in San Francisco aan het begin van Montgomery Street. Ook wel eens Wall Street van het Westen genoemd, omdat het de traditionele thuisbasis was voor sleutelinstellingen uit de financiële wereld, zoals Bank of the West, vandaag een subsidiarie van BNP Paribas Groep, of Wells Fargo. Niet alleen is deze straat de plaats waar ons kantoor van hub.brussels is gevestigd, maar het is ook de vestigingplaats van Imec, een onderzoekinstituut met hoofdkwartier in België en kantoren over heel de wereld. Het Imec-bureau in Brussel werkt nauw samen met de Vrije Universiteit Brussel VUB op het gebied van artificiële intelligentie. Een van de laatste activiteiten die ons bureau in San Francisco organiseerde voor de COVID, met de gewaardeerde van onze consul-generaal Günther Slewagen, was een werklunch in LA met de VUB en haar hoofd van het departement Human Physiology, Romain Muizen. Dit event begon door belangrijke academische vertegenwoordigers van de VS en ondernemingen actief op het gebied van artificiële intelligentie. Het was de ideale gelegenheid om de sleutelrol van dit researchgebied voor de VUB, Imec en Brussel in de verf te zetten. Deze expertise is geïllustreerd in het VUB-persboek met de titel Homo Roboticus, dat antwoord geeft op 30 vragen over de mens, technologie, wetenschap en kunst. Imec speelt eveneens een belangrijke rol in het verhaal van onze spreker, Julien Penders, medeoprichter van Bloomlife, wiens missie het is een revolutie op gang te brengen in gezondheid tijdens het moederschap. Tijdens zijn tocht kreeg hij de steun van niemand minder dan Marc Benioff, oprichter van Salesforce, en Richard Branson, meer bepaald gedurende de deelname van Bloomlife aan die Extreme Tech Challenge wedstrijd. De getuigenis die u weldra gaat horen was genomen gedurende het event On the 8 at 8, georganiseerd elke 8e van de maand om 8 uur 's avonds door de Belgian Club of Northern California, BCNC. Ik maak hier van de gelegenheid gebruik om de BCNC-voorzitter Pierre Smit te bedanken voor de organisatie van dit event. Evenals Wim Sohier, mijn collega die Vlaanderen vertegenwoordigt in de Bay Area en die zo vriendelijk was om een interview te organiseren. Ieder van u heeft een moeder, de meeste onder u hebben kinderen. En ik twijfel er niet aan dat Bloomlife's verhaal menig Brussels ondernemer actief in artificiële intelligentie of big data zal inspireren.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Belgian Club of Northern California, March 8 at 8 virtual event, a mission to improve prenatal health with advanced technology. My name is Pierre Smit, and I'm the president of the Belgian Club of Northern California. We are a social club meeting every so often to enjoy some good time between Belgians and friends living in Northern California. Today, we have Julien Penders of Bloomlife, and our moderator tonight is Wim Sohier from Flanders Investment and Trade.
It's a pleasure to be here to talk a bit about Bloomlife, what it means to me, what it means to my family and to my wife. So I also took the liberty to bring my wife because she's been a big part of this journey. So she's going to be joining us today. Yeah. So a bit about myself. So I'm born in Belgium. I was born in the Liège area, raised there, went to a University of Liège to get a master in systems engineering and engineering physics, after which I developed really an interest for biomedical engineering back then. This was back in the early 2000s, and there were actually only one program in biomedical engineering back then. That was the KU Leuven. That was the only biomedical engineering program in Belgium at the time. So I decided I wanted to specialize, and I didn't decide to go to KU Leuven. I decided, okay, I'm going to try to take a chance somewhere else. So I decided to apply to the BIEF, and I got a fellowship to go and study abroad. So that basically took me to Boston, beautiful city, and I studied there at Boston University to specialize in biomedical engineering. After which I kind of was looking for my options, and I met back at the time Bert Hazelings, who was founding a new center. Wim, I know you know him. He was founding a new center out of in Eindhoven, center, so a new center from Imec, focused on wearable healthcare. That was body area networks, it was called back then. And yeah, he kind of convinced me to go back, to cross the ocean the other direction and join Imec. And so I joined Imec, that was back in 2006. Joined Imec initially in Eindhoven, started as a researcher there, quickly took over program management for wearable healthcare, and then kind of grew responsibilities there. And at the end, I was working both in Eindhoven and Leuven in charge of wearable healthcare, basically the program on wearable sensors. It was an amazing experience. I got to, you know, as an engineer at Imec, you got access to all those amazing technology. And my role really was how to bridge technology with healthcare. And so I felt like a kid in the playground there, playing with all those nice technology and trying to understand, like, yeah, how can we make a difference in different area of healthcare? And yeah, I mean, we worked on the first EEG headsets to measure brain waves. We worked on the first ECG patch. All of those are products today that you can find, you know, that they've been commercialized by companies. I worked on smartwatch, big projects with Samsung back then. So there was really an amazing opportunity. You know, it's also where I met my future and soon to be co-founder as well at Imec. And that basically what slowly got me to Bloomlife. So this is a bunch of prototypes that my group was working on. And, you know, these are the really early prototypes of brainwave monitors, health patches, and some of these smartwatch. And, you know, we talked about that. I think I felt very privileged to work at the really forefront of, you know, the digital health revolution when I was at Imec. Then, you know, I worked at Imec for 6 years. Then suddenly a happy event happened. This is my first son, Arthur, and really he was the initiation. I remember Lou and myself driving in the south of France, and she was pregnant, and she had all those like feelings and questions about, like, is this baby moving? Is that contraction? And I was like, what do I know? You know, I'm just a soon to be dad, and I have no idea what those things are. But you know, with technology today, we should be able to measure those things. And it's really this was kind of the first time that we came to wrap around what I was doing in terms of technology development, the trends of digital health, and the need of soon-to-be parents, you know, that really have questions that it's you flying blind, especially the first time. And it's really when things started percolating in my head, or there is something to do, you know, at the crossroad between new parenting, new digital health trends, and technology. So that's really how it started. This is Arthur again. We're playing with the first prototype of the sensor. So here's Lou pregnant with our second, and then you can see some of the testing that she was doing, testing the early prototypes. So why Bloomlife? You know, so it started definitely from a personal experience. You know, our first Lou's first pregnancy, and the questions that we all had, or that we both had during the pregnancy. But then, if you look at this, we try to share a few numbers about prenatal health, maternal health. So every year in the world, there are 131 million births. So that's globally every year. And so for most people, you know, having a child is an amazing experience. It's life-changing for sure. But for some and way too many people, moms, it is also associated to stress and to complications. So 1 in 5 pregnancies are associated to some type of complications. So it's 20%. It's a very high number. We often don't realize that. 1 in 10 babies are born too early. So what's called preterm birth, which is a birth before 37 weeks of gestation. And in 1/3 of the case, a baby will be born through C-section. And this number is when we know the risk factors associated to preterm birth, or the risk factors associated to C-sections, these are very, very high number. And that's still the situation today. Due to all those complications, there is a lot of money spent both everywhere in the world. These are 2 numbers just to kind of give you an idea of how much is spent in maternal health and prenatal health these days. So per year in Europe, we spend about 85 billion euro on pregnancy, on caring for pregnancy. In the US, it's about $100 billion that are spent on pregnancy. So staggering number. But despite those numbers, despite the complications, what a mom has to deal with when she's pregnant is this type of monitoring. You know, this is a CTG, or cardiothoracogram. That's a technology which is used to measure the baby heartbeat and contractions. And that technology that you see here was first introduced in 1971. Today we are in 2021, so 50 years later, it is still the technology which is used today in hospital. It hasn't changed in 50 years. And really, like, this is what we here to change. So at Bloomlife, we recognize and we see this opportunity to bring, better technology, better user experience for mom and doctors, and provide the data that is required to manage, pregnancy in a better way than we do today. So at Bloomlife, we're building the future of prenatal care, combining connected devices and data analytics to improve access, empower moms, and improve outcomes eventually. So these are really what we are set to do at Bloomlife. So how do we do this? We started, so the strategy, perhaps to give you like a very high level, how we thought of making this happen, right? So there's 50 years, so you should look at ourselves, myself and my co-founder, Eric D, who was also an Imec alumni. When we started looking at this problem, and we understood like the problem from a mom perspective, from a doctor perspective, like how are we going to change something that hasn't changed in 50 years, right? So we need to do things differently. And the approach that we came up with was really a strategy in 3 steps. First, we believe that there is something we can do for moms. There is something you can do for moms by answering the questions that Lou and I had when we had our first child, which was, okay, what is happening right now? Like, is my baby moving? Is that the contractions? How can we help answer that question? And that was the first step of our strategy. As we answer these questions with a product mainly focused towards moms, we can also start collecting data with the help of the moms, with, of course, her consent. We can start collecting data, and using that data, we can start applying data analytics technique, big data, to use one of those buzzwords, which I don't like to remember, it says what it is. So we use all of that data and data analytics to start understanding what are possible risk factors and indicators for pregnancy complications. So that really is the second step of our approach, is to use the data that we collect with the first product to understand what are the early biomarkers, the early indicators for pregnancy complications. And in the third step, once we have identified those markers, those risk factors, then we can start working with doctors to implement those risk factors into the clinical care, workflows, right? So really to start then to make an impact, not only on the mom and on her own questions, but also make an impact on healthcare and on the medical systems, right? So that really what we set, it was now 6 years ago, what we set as a strategy for ourselves. And it hasn't, I mean, of course, a lot happened since then, but just we've stayed true to our strategy. So this is really something that we've been, executing on, and that we've been progressing towards. And it's something that, as far as I can tell, so far it's been working pretty well. So the first product following this strategy was a product really targeted to moms. So our first product was a pregnancy tracker. It's the device that you can see here on the picture that tracks and counts contractions. So it does answer the question that a mom may have, which is like, what is a contraction? What does a contraction feel like? And if I have contractions, how many of those contractions do I have? Right? So that was the first product. It was launched on the US market in 2017. And I share here some of the feedback that we got. It's really a product that, even it wasn't medical per se, it was more like on the information side, it was educational side. Even though it wasn't a medical product yet, it has really changed, the way our users approach pregnancy, and it really helped them having peace of mind. It really helped them understanding what was happening and get this kind of confirmation, that second opinion that reinforces them in what they were feeling and empowering them to make the right decision when it comes to understanding contractions. So that was for us like an amazing experience to get this product out there in the hands of pregnant moms, and to see how it was really changing what they were experiencing. We also did a couple of clinical studies, small scale, but to see, okay, what is the impact on anxiety and on stress? And we showed that, and this is perhaps a bit technical, but this is the only technical side, I promise. But this basically show in blue, this is how stress and anxiety evolves from pre-using the Bloomlife device and afterwards. So what you see is that when she uses the Bloomlife device, her level of anxiety about delivery decreases. If she's not using the device, you see in light blue here, it kind of stays more or less equal. So that kind of makes the case for the fact that providing more information to mom during her pregnancy will actually help her feel more empowered, feel more in control, and indirectly will therefore make her less anxious about her pregnancy. And this is work that we have, of course, continuously ongoing, but this was very exciting data because it showed really that using, even like there was a consumer product in the first place, even using a consumer product could help, reduce anxiety during this stressful moment of her life. Then in our strategy, the second step was then to evolve from consumer product into a medical product, a medical device. That is work that is pretty much in development right now. And so the second goal for us is to extend from answering a question that moms have, which is like, okay, what does a contraction feel like, to also answer a question that doctors have. And doctors care about they care about the mom, of course, but also care about the baby's heartbeat. So they want to understand if the baby's heart rate is good. It's like the same way that, as adults, we go to a cardiologist and do some ECG stress test. You could see that the same way, like the baby also has a lot of change in ECG and the heart rate, and the doctors want to understand if those changes in the heart rate that the baby may have are normal or they're not. And this is done through what's called antepartum fetal monitoring. So it's a regular monitoring that is done typically in the last trimester of pregnancy. And so what we're doing now is extending the system, and we changed the patch, as you can see a little bit. The patch is a different shape. It's still the same electronics. There was a different algorithm, but we're changing the system to basically replace this machine that I showed to you like 5 minutes ago. We want to change it. We want the new standard of care not to be a woman that needs to be hooked up to a big machine at the hospital, but to be a woman in the comfort of her home, able to track her contraction, her baby heartbeat, just simply with the comfort of a patch and an app. So that is really what we're working on right now, and we believe this is really going to change the way we approach prenatal care by allowing women to do that from home. And as a side note is that what we've seen last year with COVID has only made that need more pressing. I mean, the number of doctors now that approach us, because before it was kind of a nice to have, yeah, it's good if I can keep my patient at home. Last year, it was a must have. And this solution wasn't available. So what happened is that a lot of moms got delayed care. And delayed care is bad for everyone, but delayed care when you're pregnant and delayed care when you have a high-risk pregnancies could be really life-threatening for you and your baby. And so the absence of a technology like this in times of a pandemic really is something that has clearly showed the need for a solution like this, as quickly as possible. So that's work in progress. I think that's something that we will be, we hope to get a clearance on this sometimes this year. So we'll see. We're working on this actively. And so the last part of it is, as we using those products, we develop those products, we put them in the hands of users. Really, at the background, what we are doing is really crowdsourcing the largest and the more comprehensive data set on maternal and prenatal health that ever been collected. And I'll get to some numbers before, but what we're doing then is using that data set that we collect through our users, again, with their consent. So we ask them, can we use your physiological data to power prenatal health and maternal health research? And most of our users will say yes. And then we work with our clinical partners to start making sense of that data, to start understanding the biggest prenatal health challenge by looking at the data and see if we can find those risk factors. And these are a couple of partnerships that we've established along the years. Both in the US, but also in Belgium, with clinical centers, academic centers that help us really map the data that we have collected with those prenatal health challenge. This takes time. This is way more of a clinical science type of work, but it does pay off. And we already had a couple of publications where, using the data we've collected to date, and just to give you an idea, we already had 12,000 women who used the product. This is about 1 million hours of physiological data. This is by far the largest data set ever collected. And this allowed us really to start, mining that data, analyzing that data. And we showed that we could find early signs of labor in this data. And that's something which is totally new. So that means that using physiological data, we can detect early changes in physiology that go with labor. And by doing this, we can anticipate labor. And by anticipating labor, you can really start thinking of more proactive way to deliver care for those women and those babies. So that's exciting work. It's something that we are actively working on right now, with some funding from Valio and some funding also from the European Commission on this project. So, you know, all of this, this kind of a snapshot of what we do. I mean, I really today want to also highlight my team. I have a wonderful team, and we'll talk about where they are, but it's really based on 2 continents. We have people here in the US and some people in Belgium. And, you know, especially today on International Women's Day, I do want to especially thanks, you know, all the talented and passionate women we have on the team. You see some of them here on the picture. It has been a great pleasure to work with all of them. The team is passionate, but I think, you know, especially the women on our team really feel what we work for, and the passion that we can see through their work is really something that, you know, is inspiring and is really making us move forward every day. You know, it's kind of what I wanted to share with you. So Bloomlife is about bringing longevity innovations to, I think, one of the most precious times in life. And, you know, we've been hard at work the last 6 years, and there is still more to go, more to do. But yeah, this is, you know, this is what we are working on. So yeah, I'll leave it with that. And Wim, I'm happy to take questions.
You have a globally dispersed team. You're active in Hasselt, you're active in Liège, you're active in San Francisco. How do you manage such a globally dispersed team, and what was the rationale behind setting it up like that across the transatlantic?
Yeah, good question. I guess I'll start with the rationale, then we'll talk about the operational aspects afterwards. So the rationale really was it was to combine the best of 2 worlds. So when we started, you know, coming from Imec, both Eric and I being from Imec, our network, technical network, but also clinical network was around Belgium and the Netherlands. So the people we knew, our first team members, you know, were all people that used to work with me at Imec. And so it was natural for us to be anchored from an R&D perspective and a clinical validation strategy perspective. It made sense for us to be anchored around Belgium. Right? And so that made the Belgium case very clear. As I explained, our strategy was also to start with a consumer product. And so when you're thinking of launching consumer product, you also need to look at your market, your target market. And there, I mean, if you look at a single market, Belgium is 110,000 births per year. The US is 4.4 million, right? So when you look at the unique market and as a startup, like the ease of the access to the market was much simpler looking at the US, right? Because it's the same. You put a website on, you put like a bunch of Facebook ads, and you can start selling. I'm oversimplifying, obviously, but this is at least perhaps how it looked when we started. It turned out to be much more difficult than that. But clearly, the consumer market was in the US, and then funding also, you know, partly came in the US, especially early on. I would say when it was a bit more at risk. I think the funding came from the US, but what we found out is that in the end, we managed to get funding pretty much even between Belgium and the US. So we ended up being like almost 50-50 if I look at our cap table today of investors in Belgium, investing in the US, but it did help a lot to anchor, as we say, anchor the fundraising, anchor the rounds in the US. And so, you know, looking back, I think that's kind of how we look at it. Okay, we're going to keep our R&D in Belgium. We have to sell a consumer product, and we need funding from VC, so we need to be in San Francisco as well. That's kind of how it started, and along the years we kept that duality because I think it worked out very well for us. And yeah, it's something. I mean, it does have some challenge, so we'll get to that, but it definitely works out very well. So good enough to keep it and not to change it. Now, in terms of the second part of your question, Wim, the challenge of managing, I think this is something we had to learn. You know, I think it's as everything, it's definitely a challenge to be remotely, and it has become even more a challenge last year. I used to travel a lot. I used to go and see the team like 6 or 7 times per year, and I used to. So of course, it requires a lot of travel, so it's very tiring for sure. But I think this is that's what you saw. I think the way we did it is a lot of early mornings, a lot of time contact, Zoom calls with the team. And then face-to-face time, we try to do it once every 2 months, just to kind of think on the strategy. When you're a young startup, your strategy changes all the time, even though like the overarching strategy stays the same. but the day-to-day strategy or the month-to-month strategy, of course, evolves. And so how do you make sure that we all are in sync within the company? That was the biggest challenge of being remote, right? And I think this could be solved by seeing the team every 2 months, but then when it stopped, that even increased that challenge with COVID, it increased the challenge even more. And so, but then we, like every other company, at that time, now everybody's the same, everybody's remote, everybody was at home. So we just kind of made it a bit more extreme, but we continue to communicate a lot. I think the one word I want to say to answer your questions, how do we manage, is communication over communication. Like always, like state things and make sure everybody is aware. Don't assume that someone in your team knows something, just keep repeating. Even if you sound like a broken record, it's better than being like misaligned and becoming misaligned. So that's really, I think, the
Great. So I imagine a lot of young aspiring entrepreneurs will be watching this, and as you know, probably better than I do, but many startups, they go through difficult phases as well, and they need to make some pivots at certain moments in time or change the strategy a little bit. Mm-hmm. Could you share a little bit your experience in how to overcome those pivotal moments, and what were some of the key moments in fundraising that really boosted you to the next level of growth?
All right, so a couple of questions in there. Yes, there are always hard moments, that's for sure. And any startup entrepreneur that would say there isn't is probably not telling the truth. It's always been ups and downs. It is a roller coaster for sure. I don't know if there was any good way to go through those. I think for us, within my business partner, within the family, and within the team, it's always been transparency. I know it's like we are a small team, we all grown-ups, and we've always believed within the company that we can trust our team to understand the situation, right? And I think, yes, there was always hard decisions to make, there was always pivots to make, and I can share a couple afterwards, but I think the way to go through those pivots is communicating and trusting each other that, yes, I can share with you that this is a hard time, because together we will have more chance to get out of it. That if as a founder you keep everything for yourself and you're trying to solve it for the team, then you're only as good as 2 brains, where your team is 10 brains, and everybody will come up with better solutions. So we try to be as transparent as possible to involve everyone when the situation was becoming more critical, to be creative in the situations that will get us out of there. And for us, the critical moments have been, I don't know if so. I think one has been when we decided to focus on, we always wanted to focus on the consumer product. We didn't know yet what exact consumer product it would be, right? So as a young parent, or soon-to-be parent, you have tons of questions. I was curious about baby kicks. That was the one that I really liked. I wanted to know how much my baby was kicking, right? So how active was he? Because it's known that, baby kicks is related to the fetal health. So that was one that was on the table. A lot of parents care about the baby heartbeat as well. There was contractions. There was a lot of maternal parameters as well, like stress, sleep. So there was a lot we could do. And so one of the early challenges we had is, okay, this is all we can do. And I remember building a prototype early on that could do everything. And the hard choice there was, and I'm glad we did it, was not to build everything, because the chance of us failing trying to build everything was big, because it's the beginning, you don't have a lot of funding. So we had to really narrow down and focus. And so for us, the focus was on contraction. We decided to go there for tons of multiple reasons, but I think that was a hard decision to make, to say, okay, this is what we're going to do first, and we're going to focus on that and only on that, even though I wanted to build 1,000 different things as well, but being very focused, I think that was a first decision that was important. The second decision that has been important for us, and it's not that much of a pivot, but it's something that we really had to stay through the journey. That's our strategy to move from consumer to medical. Right? So we've never wanted to build a gadget company. That has never been why we created Bloomlife. The reason why we created Bloomlife was to change the standard of care in prenatal health. And we strongly believed, and with 5 years hindsight, I still believe that that's the right way to do it. We strongly believe that the way to change prenatal care was to go and involve and start with the mom. In the end, it sort of makes sense. She has everything to gain and to lose, but this isn't how healthcare is done today. Healthcare, it puts the doctor in priority, not the mom. The mom is being told what to do. So this approach to start with the mom and work with the mom to kind of influence the healthcare system and the doctors is something that we had to stay through. And a lot of people were telling us, don't do that. Just develop another medical product and go with a doctor. We strongly believe that this isn't what we need to do. That's not our mission. And so that has been something that we had to fight for multiple instances, to stay through to our vision and stay through to our mission, to put the mom first. And I think that's another hard decision sometimes, when sometimes somebody says, I'm going to write you a big check if you become a consumer product, and then you have to say, no, I'm not going to become a consumer product. I'm not going to take your big check, and I'm making the right decision. These are hard decisions to make, for sure. So I think that's another hard decision that we had to make on the journey.
Yeah, great. Talking about writing you a check, for the audience viewing from Belgium, we do still write checks here in the US. And that would be my next question. So you had these key moments in fundraising as well. And both Baudouin from ABEX and Eric from hub.brussels and myself from Flemish Investment Trade, we've been big fans of Bloomlife and of you. And at a certain moment, you did things that no other young spin-off ever did before coming out of Belgium. For example, the attention you got from Richard Branson, the attention you got from Marc Benioff. Could you share a little bit how important those key moments were, and did you receive a big check from them as well?
Yeah, good question. So those moments were really key turning points in the life of the company, for sure. I think the visibility you get as a startup from the CES competition first and the Branson contest afterwards was huge. So just to give a bit of background, so this was in the context of the Extreme Tech Challenge. The Extreme Tech Challenge is a startup competition, a startup contest. So you have many of those contests, but I would venture to say that the Extreme Tech Challenge is one of the biggest out there. When we participated, it was in 2016, I believe. There were over 2,000 startups participating, right? And so so you have a round of evaluation, basically. The semifinals were at CES, and I think, Wim, that's what you refer to, where we presented there and we got a chance to be selected as a finalist. You have 3 finalists. And in the 3 finalists, they got a chance to go and pitch Branson on his private island. So first off, it's like as entrepreneurs, like it's for many people, it's a dream coming true. I actually have another fun fact about this one, but it's a dream coming true. You go and you do spend like 5 days on Necker Island, and you get a chance to meet with amazing entrepreneurs and people. So that was amazing. And so not only for the experience, which, for the side note, I didn't get a chance to go because that same week we had Charlene, so my second child. So Eric got a chance to go and shake hands with Branson, where I was bedside doing loo because we were having our second daughter. So, sometimes you're going to make some choices, hard choices. This was an easy choice. I didn't have to hesitate for 2 seconds, but it's so anyway. So that was Branson. And so back to your question, Wim. It's amazing the impact it has. I didn't expect that much. Of course, it's the moment it happens, it's great, but the publicity you get from winning a competition like this and having, a picture of Branson and talking about your company, it is really changing the life of the company. So what happened is that after we won this context from Sir Richard Branson, 3 months after, we got Marc Benioff indeed coming in and almost knocking on the door. I see if we wanted to invest, and so that doesn't happen very often, I gotta say. So we were lucky there. I think it's a combination of being at the right time was the right thing, and and I think it happened for us, and this was great. I mean, that was a seed funding back then. It really helped us to get the seed funding, and it got us to market with the first product. So that was it was for sure a turning moment in the company. Yeah.
What is on the planning for the nearby future? Are you working towards an FDA approval or not?
So I won't disclose too much because it's recorded. But yes, I mean, as I shared the strategy. So our next step is a medical device. And to get a medical device on the market, you need a proper regulatory approval. And in the US, it means FDA. In Europe, it means CE marking. So this is clearly what's next on the horizon for us, is to make that step from the consumer product now into a medical device that we can sell into the healthcare system. So this is what we're focusing on right now. It's really following our strategy, and so that's going to keep us busy for quite a few more months, but yes, that's what's on the agenda.
Where are you producing at the moment, and how do you see that evolve?
That's a great question. So of course we do hope we'll have much more demand, and we need to grow production. So today it's small scale production. It's actually distributed between Europe and the US, depending on which part of the system. We have a very specific business model because it's based on rental or lease. So the actually hardware piece, you service it, so you can reuse it, which helps you bring the cost down. So I don't think we'll ever get to the consumer electronics volume on the electronic side. We're not making another phone. We're not making computers. So I don't think it's going to get there. On the consumable piece, yes. On the patch, we hope that of course this will grow tremendously. And so as we grow volume on the patch side, we'll be looking at alternative. We already do part of this in Eastern Europe, where it is cheaper. I haven't looked actively in China yet, but it is definitely something which is or Asia, which is on the radar. So we are considering this, but when let's get to market with the medical device first, and then we'll figure out the production aspects. But definitely that stays on the back of our mind. Yes.
How do you see the positioning of Bloomlife in that? And is the access to data not a stumbling block for Bloomlife sometimes?
It is a great question. It's not an easy one to answer. I think the way we approach data and sharing of data is I guess there was two very important principles. There was the ethics of it. So first, you only get the data if the person or the user consents to get the data, and for that you need to explain what you do, and that's we put our mission up front a lot to just explain our users that this is why we want your data, this is why we like to use it, and we're being very transparent on this. I think that's the first aspect of it. And then there was another aspect of it which is very important in how we design a product is reciprocity. No one likes to share the data just for the sake of it. And I think the fact that you share for a mission, I think it's already making it possible. But if you really want to be successful, you combine the mission-driven aspects of it, the passion that people have to help you towards your goal, but also you give them something in return. And that could be a better product experience. It could be, an easier access to care, but you give them something in return that, again, is reciprocity. So they give you something, you give them something. And if you combine those two things, that you do things that are mission-driven and that you communicate about this, and you also give something in return, then what we've seen is that people are willing to share. It's not bad, and there was a lot of bad things around sharing data. And I think, of course, if it's done at a very high scale and without protection, that's not a good thing to do. But I think there is something good about sharing the data for a greater good, and that's really what we cultivate. I think that's something we can easier communicate. I think at our scale, that a larger company doing social media may be able to. So I think that's clearly is a difference. But again, I think this is really for us the two fundamental pillars of making a data, innovation work. Yeah.
Wonderful. Lots of interesting things we learned here during this short but powerful session.
Thank you very much, Julien and Wim, for a great presentation, very well moderated, and good organization. Thank you so much.
Ik ben nu terug aan onze San Francisco kantoor in Montgomery Street. Ik wil u de gelegenheid geven een gratis exemplaar van het boek Homo Roboticus te winnen. Het boek dat ik vernoemd eerder in het programma. Het enige dat u moet doen is ons uw commentaar geven op ons kanaal of op LinkedIn betreffende deze uitzending. En die met de meest inspirerende commentaar ontvangt dit gratis exemplaar. Ik kijk er naar uit veel van uw commentaren en vragen te mogen ontvangen. Tot binnenkort.